12 years before the hillside tore open, someone had already written down exactly how it would happen, and the agency responsible stamped the file closed. February 2017, Northern California. The emergency spillway at Oroville Dam, the tallest dam in the United States, eroded through an unlined hillside and nearly collapsed, forcing the evacuation of nearly 188,000 people downstream. But the engineering failure had already occurred, quietly, on paper, in 2005. This is Fail Point. Tonight's report: the Oroville Spillway Crisis. The Feather River cuts through the Sierra Nevada foothills in Butte County, California. By the 1950s, California's population was exploding southward into a desert that did not naturally support it. Water had to move. The State Water Project was the answer, an audacious network of canals, pumps, and reservoirs designed to carry snowmelt from the north to cities and farms hundreds of miles south. Oroville Dam was its keystone. Completed in 1968, it rises 770 feet above the Feather River, an earthfill structure, the tallest dam of any kind in the United States. Everything downstream depended on it holding. Every dam that stores water needs at least two ways to release it in a flood. Oroville had two spillways. The main spillway was a concrete-lined chute, 3,000 feet long, capable of releasing 250,000 cubic feet of water per second. The emergency spillway was something different, simpler, cheaper. It was not a chute at all. It was a concrete weir, a low overflow lip, sitting atop a natural hillside of compacted soil and weathered rock. If water ever rose high enough to spill over that lip, it would flow uncontrolled down raw, unlined earth toward the valley below. No concrete armor, no engineered channel, just a hillside. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, licenses and oversees hydroelectric dams in the United States. Every few decades, dam operators must renew their license, and FERC opens a public comment period. In 2005, Oroville's license came up for renewal. The California Department of Water Resources, the dam's operator, submitted its relicensing application. 3 environmental organizations, the Friends of the River, the South Yuba River Citizens League, and the Ecological Rights Foundation, submitted written comments in response. They were not protesting the dam's existence. They were raising a specific, technical, engineering concern about what would happen if the emergency spillway was ever needed. The group's written comments were precise. They warned that the emergency spillway had no concrete lining on the hillside below the weir. If water flowed over it for any sustained period, erosion would undercut the weir itself. The weir could fail. An uncontrolled flood wave could follow. They asked FERC to require the California Department of Water Resources to line the emergency spillway with concrete before relicensing was approved. The FERC reviewer assigned to the case received the comment, acknowledged it, and recommended closing the file without requiring the fix. The stated rationale: the emergency spillway was unlikely to be used. It was a probabilistic dismissal of a structural argument. To understand why the groups were right, consider what unlined soil does under moving water. Water flowing over bare earth does not just sit there. It picks up particles from the surface, carries them away, and the surface drops. The next flow finds fresh soil, picks up more, drops further. Engineers call this process head-cut erosion. A notch forms, migrates upstream, and deepens with every passing minute of flow. Think of it like pulling a loose thread from a sweater. The first pull is small, each subsequent pull is faster. The structure unravels from the bottom up. The concrete weir at the top of the hillside was the last stitch holding everything together. For 11 years after FERC closed the file, Lake Oroville never rose high enough to threaten the emergency spillway. The warning sat in the archive. Then came the winter of 2016 to 2017. An atmospheric river, a concentrated band of Pacific moisture, made landfall over Northern California in early February. It was one of the wettest winters on record. Lake Oroville rose steadily. On February 7th, a large section of the main concrete spillway suddenly collapsed mid-chute, blowing a crater more than 300 feet wide into the structure. Operators reduced outflow. The lake kept rising. By February 11th, water was approaching the emergency spillway crest for the first time in the dam's history. Water cleared the emergency spillway weir on February 11th. It was not a catastrophic surge. It was a trickle at first, spreading across the lip and beginning its journey down the unlined hillside. Operators and engineers watched. For a few hours, the flow seemed manageable. Then the head-cut erosion began exactly as the 2005 comments had described. A notch formed at the base of the weir. It grew. Within hours, a massive hole had opened in the hillside directly below the concrete lip. The weir was being undermined from beneath. If the lip failed entirely, nothing controlled the outflow. Lake Oroville, holding 3.5 trillion gallons of water, would drain through an open wound in the earth. At 4:45 in the afternoon, on February 12th, Butte County issued a mandatory evacuation order for communities downstream. Oroville, Gridley, Marysville, Yuba City. Nearly 188,000 people were told to leave immediately. Highways gridlocked, gas stations ran dry. The evacuation was the largest in California history since the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. And yet, the weir held. Barely. The lake level dropped as releases continued and inflow slowed. By February 14th, the immediate crisis had passed. The hillside was devastated. The erosion hole was enormous. But the weir itself had not fully collapsed. The failure the 2005 comments had predicted had come within hours of occurring, and then, narrowly, did not. The independent forensic team assembled afterward. The independent forensic team, commissioned by FERC, published its final report in January 2018. It was direct. The original construction of the main spillway had left voids and weak zones beneath the concrete that had gone uninspected for nearly 50 years. That was why the main spillway failed first. But the report also addressed the emergency spillway. It confirmed what the 2005 comments had warned. The unlined hillside was never adequate for sustained flow. The team found that FERC's 2005 decision to dismiss the relicensing comments without requiring corrective action was a significant missed opportunity. Significant missed opportunity. 12 words for 12 years of inaction. California spent approximately $1.1 billion repairing the main and emergency spillways after 2017. The emergency spillway received the concrete armoring that the environmental groups had requested in 2005. The work took 2 years. The cost of the repair was roughly 100 times the estimated cost of lining the spillway before the event. That ratio, the gap between the price of prevention and the price of disaster, is not unique to Oroville. It appears in nearly every major infrastructure failure in the historical record. The engineering was not the mystery. The mechanism of failure was documented, submitted, and acknowledged. What failed first was the institutional process that decided the risk was acceptable. 3 organizations wrote a warning. 1 reviewer read it, noted it, and closed the file. No malice, no conspiracy. Just the ordinary weight of bureaucratic inertia pressing down on an inconvenient technical truth until the hillside itself forced the answer. Oroville did not fail because engineers lacked knowledge. It failed because a system designed to surface risk decided, quietly, that this particular risk could wait. The 188,000 people who sat in gridlock traffic on the night of February 12th were not downstream of a surprise. They were downstream of a filing cabinet. Every failure has a point. Find it before it finds you. Next, the failure no inspector was allowed to see.